Hello and welcome to Dave's Random Item Show. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. Now, before we get to the meat of the video, I've got some housekeeping I need to do, so please bear with me. Unfortunately, with my claw machine dead for the foreseeable future, I've had to work on some other material, but getting it done is going to take some time. The motherboard on my claw machine is dead, and I have not been able to find a new one as of yet. So as such, I'm going to be doing one special video the first Monday of the month, and the other Mondays will be Dave's Random Game Footage videos. And as you can see, in addition to that, I'm also going to be trying a new video format. Instead of playing video games or TF2, I'm going to be using a fireplace motif. You know, the old fireside chat. I know it's not that original, but it is something new. And with that, let's get to the meat of this video. Now, this is an update to a previous video I did a few years ago about lottery tickets, and I discussed the very first instant lottery ticket that was ever made. The ticket is known as the Instant Game and is released in 1974 in Massachusetts. Now, during that video, I showed off a rare example of the first scratch-off ticket, so let's get to that segment. Now, while these new lotteries were very popular and people did enjoy playing them, there was nothing really new. Nothing had really changed much between these televised drawings and the drawings of yesteryear, but on May 29th, 1974, all of that changed. On that date, the lottery world changed forever with the release of the Massachusetts Lottery's The Instant Ticket, the first ever scratch-off ticket. With the release of this new technological marvel, lotteries around the world changed forever. Now, players had another option. Instead of waiting for the drawing and watching it on TV, you buy a ticket, you scratch off areas to match numbers, and you can win instantly, which is where the name The Instant Ticket came from. If you want to know what these tickets were, I have one in my collection. This is a special collectible released by Scientific Games Corporation. Now, how these instant tickets or scratch cards or whatever you want to call them came to be is an interesting story in and of itself. So, this is from a Mental Floss article. There's also a podcast link in the description, and it describes the events leading up to that infamous date. According to the Mental Floss article, quote, two things happened to John Koza in December 1972 that would forever alter the course of state-sponsored gambling. First, Koza earned his PhD in computer science from the University of Michigan, cutting him loose from academia. Second, the company he worked part-time for fired him, freeing up his schedule. Koza had been an employee of J&H International, a firm specializing in promotional gambling cards that were popular in grocery stores and gas stations in the 50s and 60s. The free cards could be compared to supermarket ads in newspapers in a manner similar to the game bingo. If a card matched the graphic symbols in print, the customer could win food, money, or prizes. So Koza assisted J&H with odds calculations, making sure the games were fair and the winning cards were evenly distributed. Some had a waxy coating that could be rubbed off to reveal prizes. Probability games that required players to reveal only the winning symbols, and that intrigued him. State-sponsored lottery drawings were beginning to spread throughout the country, and Koza believed that an instant scratch-off game with serious money offered would be preferred over having to wait for a weekly prize drawing. Koza was so confident in the idea that the idea would become a hit with lottery players, but the trick was he had to convince lotto officials. Koza was a computer scientist who could handle algorithms, so he decided to partner with Dan Bauer, a retail promoter and fellow J&H employee, who could help sell the notion of instant win tickets and acted as co-developer. By March 1973, the two were operating Scientific Games Corporation out of Atlanta, Georgia. They flew from state to state explaining their concept at the time, roughly 8 head lotteries, and tried to convince the lottery commissions that the games could be secure. Eventually, Koza and Bauer found a guinea pig in Massachusetts. The head of the Lotto Commission, William Pearl, had graduated from the University of Michigan in 1949 and may have felt a kinship towards Koza. He agreed to give Scientific a shot, ordering 25 million cards for the state. Koza and Bauer put themselves to work in the nascent field of scratch-off lottery and immediately ran into trouble. Federal laws were in place prohibiting the transportation of gaming cards across state lines, making their production in Georgia and shipment to Massachusetts a tangle of illegal red tape.
there were taxes levied on non-horse related gambling, which shouldn't have applied to the cards, but had to be explained to accountants. And there was a concern of counterfeiting, which necessitated the need of a secret recipe for the silicone coating that can be rubbed off with a coin. These tickets were called the Instant Game and came with a top prize of $10,000. Players could also enter a weekly entry into the 3 monthly $100,000 drawings. When the scratch off debuted in May 1974, players in Massachusetts had been buying roughly $1 million worth of 6-digit lottery drawing tickets every week. By the end of the first 7 days, the marketing of the instant win cards, the state had sold $2.7 million worth of them. Just as Goza had predicted, the immediacy of the results proved irresistible lottery fans, unquote. This paperweight was created with one of the original tickets as a commemoration, and it has found my way into my collection.
Since then, I've recently got some other examples, and of the 3 of them that I got, one of them completely threw me for a loop for reasons we'll get to shortly. But let's discuss the other 2. Now, this first example is another example of the encased ticket that I had previous to this one. There were only ever 2 that were on eBay, and they're both in my collection. Now, the next 2 examples of these tickets are scratched tickets. The first one is a scratched version of the standard game. But the fourth and final ticket is the interesting one of the group. It is the same basic design, but it's a much different version of the game. Now, in the original game, it's your standard issue basic number match game. 1 match number wins 2 instant tickets, 2 wins $10, 3 wins $1,000, and 4 matches wins $10,000. Now, there's also a letter match game where if you spell out the word game, you win $100, but if you spell out instant, you win $10,000. I wonder how many of these jackpots were missed because a losing ticket got thrown out. But in this second variation, which I've never seen before, it's my least favorite scratch-off lottery game, 7-11-21, but there are 2 different objectives here. Now, there's a combination of numbers and clovers you can scratch off, and if the numbers add up to 7, you win $10. If they add up to 11, you win $1,000, and if they add up to 21, you win $10,000. The clovers factor in because if you get 2 clovers, you get 2 free instant game tickets. Now, the collector letter game returns, but if you spell 7, you win $10. 11 will get you $1,000, and 21 wins $10,000. And again, I seriously would love to know how many of these jackpots were missed or not collected because a losing ticket got thrown out. Now, I didn't know that this version of the game existed. I don't think anyone else did either, and to prove that I'm not completely crazy or that I missed something, I went back to all of my previous research, and in every single bit of research I did, I could not find any mention of this second variation. Every one of the articles that talks about the history of scratch-off lottery tickets just either ignores it or isn't aware that it exists, which I found amazing. But it does make sense that a lot of other lotteries were using 7-11-21, so it may be just a variation that nobody's ever really heard of because it's been used in other places. And, well, that was a bit of an interesting look into lottery tickets. I'm going to be back in a couple weeks with a project I spent months working on. I should be done by then. I'm Dave Farrells. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you next week.